Truth Through Action by David Russo. Chapter 1. Words are easy. Words are everywhere. From the moment we open our eyes to the moment we drift to sleep, language surrounds us. Promises are made over coffee. Explanations fill our days. Apologies are offered when mistakes happen. Claims are posted, shared, and repeated until they begin to feel true, simply because we've heard them so often. We live in a world drowning in words. And yet, despite their seeming weight, words are surprisingly light. They require no preparation. They can be offered without follow-through. They can be polished to impress, softened to soothe, or twisted to avoid responsibility. Words can be honest, or they can be carefully constructed shields, protecting us from discomfort, effort, or accountability. Saying the right thing is often far easier than doing the right thing. It's simple to say, "I care." It's simple to say, "I'll change." It's simple to say, "This matters to me." But words demand nothing from us. They ask for no sacrifice, no consistency, no confrontation with the truth of who we are. Action does. Action costs. When we act, we invest time, energy, and sometimes reputation. Action makes us vulnerable to judgment. It exposes the risk of failure. Once an action is taken, it cannot be erased, edited, or polished. It exists, tangible and undeniable. This is why action is uncomfortable and why it is real. You can claim to value discipline, but your habits tell the real story. You can claim to value kindness, but your behavior under pressure reveals the truth. You can claim to believe in growth, but only your choices show if that belief survives difficulty. Words can conceal. Action cannot. This book begins with a simple, challenging idea. If you want to understand what someone truly believes, don't listen, observe. Watch what they do when no one is watching. Watch what they do when rewards are small or invisible. Watch what they protect, prioritize, and repeat. Belief leaves traces in behavior. Too often, we give words authority they don't deserve. We let them persuade, excuse, or deceive. We trust someone simply because they sound convincing. We trust ourselves because our intentions feel sincere. But intention without action is just imagination. Real belief moves. It shows up. It changes behavior. This isn't cynicism, it's clarity. Words matter. They guide, inspire, and point the way, but they are not proof. They are maps, not destinations. Proof exists in action. Think of the people you trust most. Not the ones who speak well, but the ones who show up. The ones whose actions are consistent. The ones you don't question because their behavior has spoken for them, again and again. Their credibility was earned through follow-through, not speeches. Now look inward. Who are you? Not by what you say, but by what you do. What do your habits reveal? What do your priorities reflect? What do you consistently make time for? These questions can sting because action strips away ambiguity. It leaves no room to hide behind good intentions or vague plans. Action forces honesty into the present. This isn't about judgment, it's about clarity. When you recognize that action reveals truth, you gain perspective. You stop being misled by empty promises. You stop arguing with behavior using words. Most importantly, you stop lying to yourself. Change doesn't start with clever explanations. It starts with different actions. Words are easy. That's why they're so tempting. Action is hard. That's why it matters. As you continue through this book, remember this. Truth is not what is claimed. It is what is lived. Once you see truth through action, words will never fool you the same way again. Chapter 2. Action reveals belief. Belief is not what we say we hold. Belief is what we live by. We often treat belief as something internal, private, thoughtful, and invisible. We assume that because we feel a certain way or agree with an idea in our minds, it must be true about us. But belief does not stay hidden for long. It expresses itself through behavior. It leaks into choices. It shapes routines. Action reveals belief because action is where belief is tested. Anyone can claim to value honesty. But honesty becomes real only when telling the truth costs something: comfort, approval, or advantage. Anyone can say they believe in hard work, kindness, or discipline. Those beliefs only exist if they show up on ordinary days, when no one is watching and no reward is guaranteed. What we do shows what we value. This is not about perfection. Everyone fails. Everyone contradicts themselves at times. A single action, taken in isolation, might be a mistake, a bad day, or a moment of weakness. But over time, actions form patterns. And patterns don't lie. If someone repeatedly avoids difficult conversations, they don't truly believe in honesty, no matter how often they praise it. If someone consistently breaks commitments, they don't believe reliability matters, even if they speak passionately about trust. If someone says they value growth but resists feedback every time it appears, their actions tell the real story. Belief lives in behavior, not intention. We are often tempted to judge ourselves by our intentions and others by their outcomes. We tell ourselves, I meant well, or I believe the right things, while measuring others by what they actually do. But truth applies the same standard to everyone. Intentions explain behavior, but they do not replace it. When words and actions align, belief is visible. When they conflict, action wins. This can feel harsh, but it is also freeing. It means we no longer have to guess. We no longer have to argue with reality. We can simply observe. Watch where time goes. Watch where energy goes. Watch what gets done without reminders or pressure. These are not accidents. They are expressions of belief. This principle applies not only to individuals, but to organizations, families, and cultures. A company may claim it values people, but its policies reveal whether that belief is real. A community may speak about fairness, but its actions show who truly matters. Systems behave according to what they believe, just as people do. The most important application, however, is personal. If you want to know what you truly believe, look at your life as it is, not as you describe it. Look at your habits, your responses, and your priorities. Look at what you do when you are tired, busy, or stressed. Those moments strip away performance and reveal conviction. This is not meant to shame. It is meant to bring honesty. Because belief that never turns into action is not belief, it is preference. It is opinion. It is a story we tell ourselves about who we wish we were. Real belief moves the body. It gets up early. It makes the hard call. It keeps the promise. It follows through when enthusiasm fades. Action reveals belief because belief drives behavior, whether we acknowledge it or not. When we accept this, we gain the ability to change. Not by arguing with ourselves, but by acting differently. Change the action, and belief will follow. Sustain the action, and belief becomes identity. This chapter is an invitation to stop defending what you say you believe and start examining what your life demonstrates. Because in the end, belief is not proven in conversation. It is proven in motion. Chapter 3. Consistency is the language of truth. One action can be an accident. Two can be coincidence. But repeated action is a pattern, and patterns reveal character. We often search for truth in dramatic moments, big decisions, public statements, or visible successes and failures. But truth is rarely loud. More often, it speaks quietly through repetition. It shows itself in what happens again and again, especially when nothing exciting is at stake. Consistency is the language truth uses when no one is trying to impress. Anyone can rise to the occasion once. Anyone can make a strong first impression, deliver a powerful speech, or act with discipline for a short burst of time. Consistency is different. It requires endurance. It requires alignment between intention and effort over days, weeks, and years. That is why consistency is hard to fake. When someone behaves the same way across different situations, pressures, and audiences, you are seeing something real. Their values are not dependent on mood or attention. Their principles are not borrowed for convenience. They act the same when it is easy and when it is uncomfortable. Truth is not proven in a single moment. It is proven over time. Think about trust. We do not trust someone because they showed up once. We trust them because they showed up repeatedly. We do not rely on someone because they made one promise. We rely on them because their promises have been kept before. Consistency builds credibility because it reduces uncertainty. When behavior is predictable, intentions no longer need explanation. The pattern speaks for itself. This is why inconsistency creates doubt. When words change from day to day, or actions swing based on convenience, we sense instability, even if we can't immediately explain it. Something feels off because truth does not shift to suit the moment. Consistency does not mean rigidity. It does not mean never changing your mind or adapting to new information. It means that your core values remain visible through your behavior, even as circumstances change. A consistent person may evolve, but they do not contradict themselves casually. Their growth has direction. Their actions make sense over time. The same principle applies inward. Who you are is not defined by your best days. It is defined by what you repeat. Your routines shape your reality. What you practice becomes natural. What you return to becomes identity. You do not become disciplined by wanting discipline. You become disciplined by acting that way repeatedly, even when motivation fades. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. A single burst of effort feels impressive, but it rarely lasts. Small actions, repeated steadily, reshape behavior and belief. Over time, they create a pattern that becomes difficult to deny. And patterns tell the truth. They tell you what you prioritize. They tell you what you tolerate. They tell you what you are willing to work for, especially when no one is watching. Private consistency is the clearest form of integrity. It is easy to act differently when there is an audience. It is harder to maintain the same standards in silence. Yet that is where truth is formed, out of sight, without applause. If you want to understand someone, don't ask what they believe. Watch what they repeat. If you want to understand yourself, don't focus on your goals. Study your habits. Consistency is not glamorous, but it is powerful. It turns action into evidence. It transforms effort into identity. And over time, it leaves no room for confusion. Truth does not rush. It does not announce itself. It simply shows up again tomorrow, and the day after that. This is the quiet strength of consistency, and why it remains the most honest language we have. Chapter 4. Silence is also an action. We tend to think of action as movement, decisions made, words spoken, steps taken. But action is broader than that. Action also includes what we avoid, what we delay, and what we choose not to do. Silence is not neutral. When something calls for a response and none is given, a choice has still been made. When an opportunity appears and is ignored, that ignoring becomes a statement. When harm, dishonesty, or injustice is visible and we remain quiet, our silence communicates just as clearly as any speech. Not acting is still acting. This can be uncomfortable to accept because silence often feels safer. It feels less risky than confrontation, less demanding than commitment, less visible than failure. We tell ourselves that staying quiet keeps us out of trouble, preserves peace, or buys time. But silence always sends a message. It can signal fear. It can signal approval. It can signal indifference. It can signal uncertainty. Whatever the reason, silence reveals something true. Think about the moments when you didn't speak up, when you noticed something was wrong but chose to let it pass, when a decision needed to be made, but you waited, hoping it would resolve itself. Those moments were not empty. They were filled with meaning, even if no one acknowledged it at the time. Avoidance is a form of action. Delaying a hard conversation communicates priorities. Failing to set boundaries teaches others what you will tolerate. Choosing comfort over clarity shapes outcomes just as decisively as bold moves do. Silence shapes the world by allowing certain patterns to continue. This is why silence is so powerful in relationships, organizations, and societies. What goes unchallenged becomes normalized. What is repeatedly ignored gains permission to stay. Over time, silence becomes agreement, not because anyone said yes, but because no one said no. This doesn't mean we must speak constantly or react to everything. Discernment matters. There are times when restraint is wise and patience is necessary. But restraint is different from avoidance. Patience is intentional. Avoidance is passive. The difference lies in awareness. When silence is chosen deliberately, it serves a purpose. When silence is chosen out of fear, comfort, or habit, it reveals something we may not want to face. Silence also shows up in personal growth. Every time we delay starting, delay changing, or delay deciding, we are making a choice about who we remain. Not yet slowly turns into not at all. Days pass, then months, then years, not because of dramatic decisions, but because of quiet inaction. The life you live is shaped as much by what you didn't do as by what you did. This is not meant to create guilt. It is meant to create awareness. Because once you recognize silence as action, you gain agency. You begin to see that waiting, avoiding, and staying quiet are not defaults. They are decisions. And decisions can be changed. Choosing to speak up, step in, or act does not guarantee comfort or success. But it does guarantee honesty. It aligns behavior with values instead of fear. It replaces passive participation with conscious choice. Truth through action includes courage, but it also includes responsibility. When you understand that silence speaks, you listen to your own behavior more closely. You notice where you withdraw, where you hesitate, and where you allow things to continue simply because stopping them feels difficult. In those moments, the question is not, "What should I say?" It is, "What is my silence saying right now?" Because whether loud or quiet, visible or unseen, action is always occurring. And silence, chosen or not, always tells the truth. Chapter 5. Integrity is alignment. Integrity is often described as honesty, but that definition is incomplete. Honesty is part of integrity, but integrity goes deeper. Integrity is alignment. It is the state where what you say, what you believe, and what you do all point in the same direction. When words and actions match, integrity is present. When they don't, something is fractured. This is why integrity is immediately recognizable. You can feel it in people who have it. They don't need to explain themselves often, because their behavior has already done the work. There is a sense of steadiness around them, a quiet confidence that comes from not having to manage contradictions. Integrity removes the need for performance. Many people live with small internal splits. They say one thing, but do another. They believe something in theory, but act differently in practice. Over time, these misalignments create tension. Energy is spent justifying behavior, adjusting stories, or avoiding situations that might expose the gap. Integrity simplifies life. When your actions match your words, there is nothing to defend. No story needs to be maintained. No image needs protecting. You are free to be consistent because you are already aligned. This does not mean being perfect. Integrity is not about never failing. It is about how you respond when failure happens. Do you acknowledge it? Do you take responsibility? Do you adjust your actions to realign with your values? Alignment is dynamic. It requires attention. Life changes, pressure increases, and incentives shift. Integrity is the ongoing practice of noticing when actions drift away from stated values and correcting course. It is choosing truth over convenience, even when no one is watching. This is why integrity is rare. Alignment often costs something. It may cost approval, comfort, or opportunity. It may require saying no when saying yes would be easier. It may demand consistency when shortcuts are available. People with integrity are not always the loudest or most charismatic, but they are unmistakable. Others trust them instinctively because their behavior is stable. What they say today will match what they do tomorrow. They demonstrate rather than persuade. In a world full of claims, integrity stands out because it does not rely on words. It relies on evidence. Over time, that evidence becomes undeniable. Integrity also shapes self-respect. When your actions align with your values, you can trust yourself. You know that your commitments matter. You know that your word has weight. This internal trust is powerful. It reduces doubt and strengthens resolve. Misalignment erodes that trust. Each time you say one thing and do another, a quiet message is sent inward. Your words are flexible, your promises negotiable. Over time, motivation weakens, not because you don't care, but because you no longer believe yourself. Integrity restores credibility, both externally and internally. This chapter is not an invitation to announce your values more loudly. It is an invitation to live them more clearly, to examine where words and actions diverge, and to choose alignment over explanation. You do not need to convince others you have integrity. You do not need to label yourself as principled. When alignment is present, it shows. Truth through action means letting your behavior carry the full weight of your values. It means closing the gap between intention and execution, belief and behavior. Integrity is not a trait you claim. It is a condition you maintain. And when your life is aligned, truth no longer needs defense. It speaks for itself. Chapter 6. Self-deception and comfortable words. The most convincing lies are often the ones we tell ourselves. They sound reasonable. They feel kind. They protect us from discomfort and preserve a positive self-image. These words are not usually dramatic or malicious. They are familiar, gentle, and endlessly flexible. I'll start tomorrow. I mean well. I would have, if things were different. These phrases are comfortable because they delay confrontation. They allow us to believe we are still the kind of person we want to be, without requiring us to act like it today. Self-deception rarely looks like dishonesty. It looks like explanation. We explain why now isn't the right time. We explain why the circumstances aren't ideal. We explain why our intentions should count, even when our behavior hasn't changed. Over time, these explanations pile up, forming a story that feels true because it is familiar. But action cuts through that story. Action is honest because it does not negotiate. It does not care how sincere an excuse sounds or how understandable a reason may be. It simply shows what happened or didn't. This is why action can feel threatening. It removes the cushion of words. It exposes the gap between who we believe we are and how we actually live. It brings clarity, but clarity often comes with discomfort. We resist action not because we don't know what to do, but because doing it would force us to stop pretending. Comfortable words keep us emotionally safe, but they keep us stagnant. They allow us to postpone effort while preserving identity. As long as change stays in language, it doesn't demand energy, risk, or vulnerability. Action demands all three. The moment you act, you replace fantasy with evidence. You learn what you are truly willing to do, not what you like to imagine. This can be humbling. It can also be liberating. Because once self-deception is exposed, growth becomes possible. You no longer have to maintain the story. You can stop negotiating with yourself and start responding to reality. This shift is powerful because it moves you from intention to responsibility. Responsibility is not blame. It is ownership. Owning your actions or inaction does not mean judging yourself harshly. It means seeing yourself clearly. And clarity is the foundation of change. Many people wait to feel ready before they act. But readiness is often another comfortable word. Action creates readiness, not the other way around. Confidence grows from evidence, not affirmation. Each honest action weakens self-deception. Each follow-through strengthens self-trust. This chapter is not about stripping away kindness toward yourself. It is about replacing comforting illusions with useful truth. Truth may be uncomfortable at first, but it gives direction. Illusion feels good, but it keeps you still. When you find yourself explaining instead of acting, pause. Ask not whether the explanation is valid, but whether it is helpful. Ask whether it moves you closer to alignment or simply delays the moment of choice. Truth through action asks for courage, not the courage to say the right thing, but the courage to do the next honest thing. When action leads, self-deception loses its power. And in that clarity, real change begins. Chapter 7. Trust is built physically. We often think of trust as something abstract, something formed in conversations or agreements. We imagine it as a fragile, invisible thread between people, strengthened by words like, "I promise," or "you can count on me." But trust is not built in words. Trust is built physically, in what people actually do, day after day. It grows in the tangible, observable moments when actions align with promises. A single promise kept may impress, but it does not create trust. Trust accumulates over repeated demonstration. It is a slow, deliberate process built on patterns of reliability and follow-through. Think about someone you trust deeply. You don't trust them because of their speeches, their declarations, or even their intentions. You trust them because they have consistently acted in ways that make their reliability undeniable. They have shown up when it mattered, made tough decisions, honored commitments, and remained consistent even when convenience or comfort suggested otherwise. Action proves intention. Words only claim it. Trust requires predictability. This doesn't mean that a trustworthy person is boring or robotic. It means that you can rely on their behavior to reflect their values consistently across circumstances. When someone is unpredictable, inconsistent, or unreliable, you may like them or even admire them, but you cannot fully trust them. Physical presence matters as much as moral consistency. Showing up is an action. Following through is an action. Meeting deadlines, keeping promises, paying attention, and responding when needed are all small but concrete ways trust is built. Over time, these acts compound into something more powerful than reputation, a sense of safety. Safety is the essence of trust. It is the quiet knowledge that another person's actions are predictable and aligned with their word. It allows relationships to deepen, collaboration to flourish, and communities to thrive. Without repeated action, words, even the most heartfelt, cannot create this sense of security. Trust is fragile, yet durable when earned. One broken promise can cause doubt, but repeated integrity repairs it faster than rhetoric ever could. Conversely, Repeated failure erodes trust faster than any single mistake might. Patterns are what matter. Trust also works inwardly. The same principle applies to self-trust. You trust yourself when your actions match your commitments, when you follow through on what you say you value, and when your behavior reflects your intentions. Self-deception weakens self-trust. Action strengthens it. The physical nature of trust has profound implications. Leaders cannot inspire trust with speeches alone. Parents cannot nurture trust with lectures alone. Friends cannot sustain trust with compliments alone. In every case, trust grows in the space between what is said and what is done, where promises meet practice. This chapter is a reminder. If you want to be trusted, do not rely on explaining, persuading, or promising. Act. Show up. Keep your word. Make reliability visible in the patterns of your behavior. Trust is not theoretical. It is earned with hands, feet, and presence. It lives in action, and only through action does it survive. The simple truth is this: words can start a relationship. Action sustains it. And consistent, aligned action creates trust that lasts far longer than any speech ever could. Chapter 8. Small Actions, Big Truths. When we think about truth, we often imagine dramatic moments, bold decisions, grand gestures, or life-changing events. We picture declarations made in front of an audience, moments that feel consequential because they are visible and unmistakable. But truth does not live only in the spectacular. More often, it resides in the small, repeated choices that form the fabric of everyday life. It lives in what we do when no one is watching, in the tiny actions that compound over time into undeniable evidence of who we are. Consider the person who always remembers to say thank you, who consistently checks in on others, who shows up even when it's inconvenient. These acts may seem minor in isolation, almost invisible, but they reveal something powerful. They reveal priorities, values, and integrity. They reveal what a person truly cares about, beyond words and intentions. Small actions have a quiet authority. They do not demand applause or recognition, but they shape perception, trust, and ultimately, reality. A habit of listening carefully, following through on small commitments, or offering help without being asked communicates volumes. It tells a story about character, about what a person believes is important, and about the kind of life they choose to live. Grand gestures can be impressive, but they can also be performative. They can be motivated by image or immediate reward. Small, repeated actions are harder to fake. They require consistency, effort, and attention. They require someone to value principle over convenience. And because they are repeated, their truth becomes undeniable. This principle applies to personal growth as well. Transformation does not usually happen in a single, dramatic moment. It happens in the small, daily decisions, choosing to act with patience, resisting distraction, prioritizing meaningful work, keeping promises, and caring for others even when it feels inconvenient. Over time, these repeated actions accumulate into the person you become. In relationships, the same holds true. Love, respect, and trust are built not by sweeping declarations, but by small, consistent gestures, showing up when it matters, listening when it is difficult, supporting quietly, and honoring commitments. These actions may seem invisible, but they create a foundation that words alone cannot. Small actions also reveal hidden truths about ourselves. They show what we are willing to invest in, what we care enough about to sustain, and where we allow excuses to take over. They expose patterns of belief and priorities more accurately than any statement of intent ever could. The power of small actions lies in their compounding effect. One thoughtful act may go unnoticed, but repeated acts create a pattern that cannot be ignored. One day, the accumulation of tiny, aligned behaviors transforms into visible evidence of a life lived with intention. This chapter is a reminder. Truth is not only found in drama. It is found in the quiet repetition, in the consistent choices that may feel small but speak louder than any speech. Every day offers opportunities to demonstrate who you are, not in grand declarations, but in the simple, persistent actions you take. In the end, small actions create big truths, and those truths are what endure. Words may fade, intentions may drift, but the cumulative effect of repeated, aligned actions becomes the undeniable proof of character, values, and life lived with authenticity. Truth is built quietly, one choice at a time. Chapter 9. Becoming someone, not saying something. Most of us spend too much time trying to explain who we are. We clarify, justify, and describe ourselves. We talk about our principles, our ambitions, our good intentions, hoping that if we say it often enough, others will believe it, and maybe we will, too. But words are fragile. They can persuade, but only until reality speaks louder. When our behavior doesn't match our claims, no amount of explanation can fully bridge the gap. Who we truly are is revealed by what we do, not what we say. Words can influence perception, but they cannot create character. Identity is formed quietly, through repeated choices that shape our habits, priorities, and relationships. Think about the difference between someone who talks about discipline and someone who shows up consistently, even when it's difficult. Or between someone who says they care and someone who demonstrates care in small, meaningful ways. In both cases, action, not words, is the true measure of authenticity. To live a life that matters, your goal shouldn't be to convince the world of who you are. It should be to actually become that person. Let your life reflect your values so clearly that no explanation is necessary. This process demands patience, focus, and courage. Becoming someone is slow, steady work. It requires confronting weaknesses, learning from mistakes, and continuing to act even when motivation is absent. It prioritizes depth over appearances and substance over showmanship. It's about doing the small, essential things when no one is watching and letting your life quietly accumulate credibility. When you live with purpose, words become secondary. Your reputation grows from consistent behavior, not from announcements. Others come to understand who you are by observing your actions, not by being persuaded. You no longer feel the need to defend, explain, or impress. Your life speaks for you. This approach also frees you from seeking approval from others. So much energy is wasted trying to make people believe we are one way rather than actually being that way. Focus on becoming a person of integrity, courage, and reliability, and respect and trust naturally follow. Becoming someone also requires brutal honesty with yourself. You must recognize where your actions fall short of your values, confront patterns of avoidance, and correct inconsistencies. This self-awareness is not self-criticism. It's the foundation for real transformation. Over time, small, deliberate actions accumulate. They shape your character and signal to yourself and others that you are dependable, principled, and committed. Your behavior compounds into a life that communicates with clarity and authority. The most respected people aren't those who explain themselves. They're those whose lives silently demonstrate who they are. Strong reputations are built on patterns of action, not declarations. This chapter is a reminder. Meaning comes from becoming, not from talking. Stop trying to convince others with words. Start showing them through the person you choose to be. Let your life embody the values you want to live by. When you do this, actions no longer need interpretation. Your life itself becomes the evidence. Chapter 10. Living the Principle. Truth isn't a concept to admire from a distance, nor is it a philosophy to nod along with. It's a practice, a way of living that demands focus, courage, and consistency. It calls for showing up every day, choosing integrity over convenience, and letting your actions convey what words alone cannot. Each day brings countless opportunities to embody this principle. Every choice, no matter how small, either reflects your values or undermines them. Do you honor your commitments, even when it's inconvenient? Do you act with honesty when no one is watching? Do you embrace courage when comfort tempts you? It's these everyday decisions, not occasional grand gestures, that define truth. Living the principle means understanding that words are tools, not evidence. Words can inspire, explain, or soothe, but they are meaningless without action. Promises carry weight only when followed through. Beliefs only exist when mirrored in behavior. Intentions matter far less than outcomes. Action is the purest measure of authenticity. Consistency is vital. One upright act is a start, but it is repeated actions that reveal clarity. Our character is shown in what we do repeatedly, especially when effort is hard, motivation wanes, and recognition is absent. Over time, these habits form a mirror, reflecting who we truly are more honestly than any speech could. Inaction speaks as loudly as action. What we avoid, delay, or ignore communicates volumes. Living the principle demands facing discomfort, taking responsibility, and choosing alignment over avoidance. Action is not optional if your life is to reflect truth. Self-honesty is equally essential. Excuses, rationalizations, or soothing words may feel safe, but they postpone reality. Action strips away pretense, exposing what truly is. Every honest step reinforces self-trust and propels you toward the person you aim to become. Trust, both from others and yourself, emerges naturally from this way of living. People trust those whose deeds consistently match their words. We trust ourselves when our actions align with our values. Trust is tangible. It grows from repeated demonstrations of reliability, integrity, and care. The power of truth through action compounds quietly over time. Small, steady choices, showing up, listening, following through, acting with kindness, accumulate into undeniable proof of character. Dramatic gestures may grab attention, but it is consistent alignment between action and values that leaves a lasting mark. The principle is straightforward. Act with honesty, intention, and consistency. Let your conduct reflect your words and beliefs. Let your life convey what speech cannot. People notice patterns, not promises. Character is revealed in motion, not explanation. When actions lead, truth follows. Words fade, promises are forgotten, but the life you live, the integrity you maintain, the trust you nurture, remains undeniable. Living the principle is neither easy nor glamorous, but it is the clearest route to authenticity, influence, and lasting truth. Your deeds will speak long after your words are gone. Ensure they tell the story you intend.